The Woods-Wise Callmasters present the Vocal Wildlife Series. The Woods-Wise Callmasters present Vocal Turkeys. Woods-Wise Callmaster Jerry Peterson is one of America's premier wildlife callers. Peterson has been designing and using calls for over 2 decades. A professional writer and lecturer, Jerry has instructed tens of thousands of outdoorsmen on calling techniques and strategies. His new Vocal Wildlife Series is designed to bring America closer to its wildlife. Champion caller Gary Sefton is a veteran in wildlife communication. His experience with wildlife is broad and deep. Sefton's specialty is calling the wild turkey. Gary regularly shares his knowledge and talent at seminars across America. Biologist and wildlife photographer Wade Nolan has been working with wildlife professionally since 1973. His photos and footage have been broadcast worldwide. One of Wade's best-kept secrets on filming wildlife is his ability to call them in close. Wild turkeys enjoy an expanded range today that allows most callers to locate these big birds easily. But locating turkeys and calling them in are 2 different things. When to call, how often to call, what call to use, and how to set up to call are a few questions the callmasters can answer for you. Calling a wild turkey until he's up close and personal is a thrilling experience that you'll never forget. Although many people watch wildlife, few are informed enough to interact with an animal as wild as the mountains themselves. Turkeys can be successfully called year-round, but especially in the spring and fall. Understanding their social life as it evolves through the seasons will enable you to plug into turkey calling in the woodlots where you live. Getting next to nature is something many Americans have been missing out on. The Woods-Wise Vocal Wildlife Series is designed to bridge the gap between want to and how to. The callmasters have years of experience in both teaching calling techniques and decoding wildlife behavior. Understanding what makes America's wild turkeys tick is a wise first step in learning how to talk turkey.
The American wild turkey. He's been a fascination of mine ever since I was a boy. And thanks to sound game management and restoration programs, he can be found virtually all across America, in virtually every state, probably within an hour of where you live, and for some of you, probably right in your own backyard. Now, when it comes to calling wild turkeys, it may seem complicated at first, but really it's quite simple. We're going to show you how simple it is by letting you watch and listen to wild turkeys, and we're going to explain what those sounds mean and when to use them. Next, we're going to show you how to use various types of calling devices to reproduce those sounds. Some of these devices so simple that when you take them out of the package, you're ready to go. Now, let's take a quick look at the wild turkey and find out what makes him tick.
A turkey flock consists of mature males and females, plus juveniles. Males are called gobblers or toms. These large, dark birds have a noticeable beard that hangs from their chest. Hens are usually brown and much smaller than the toms. Hens less than 1 year old are called jennies. And immature gobblers of the same age are referred to as jakes. One easy way to distinguish a jake from an adult gobbler in both fall and spring is by the longer center tail feathers in his fan. A brood of hatchlings are called poults. Each of these classes have characteristic calls they use during varying periods of the year. Although turkeys are very vocal, their basic language is simple to master. Let's begin our discussion of wild turkeys with an overview of their life during the spring of the year. This is the breeding season, and turkeys are still members of the flock they wintered with. Mature gobblers are spending much of their time with and around the hens now, and they're roosting in the same vicinity. In the early dawn, before the sun rises, the gobblers begin to gobble while still in the roost high above the forest floor. This loud gobbling alerts hens that a tom is nearby and that he's interested in courtship. Hens often fly down from the roost while giving an excited fly-down cackle call. And then work their way toward the gobbling gobbler. The old tom then parachutes down from his perch. His sunrise gobbling has done its job, and he has a flock of hens to impress. The courtship display of the wild turkeys is one of the most beautiful in nature. The black and bronze gobblers are about twice the size of the brown hens. As toms display their tail feather fans and puff up their plumage, they strut back and forth in front of the hens. The wing feathers of the toms drag on the ground and grate as he makes a deep vibrating sound, which is referred to as drumming. Occasionally he throws his head out straight and gobbles for all he's worth, then falls back into full strut. The hens eventually succumb to his courtship display and are bred. Thus, the cycle comes full circle.
All right, let's get started on calling the wild turkey. You know, there's probably 30 or more sounds that turkeys make, but that sounds a little confusing. Really, there's only 3 sounds you need to be concerned with. They're kind of the ABC sounds. They're the cluck, the yelp, and the purr. If you master these 3 sounds, you can go out right now and be successful at calling wild turkeys. If you want to get started, let's get started with the basics: the cluck, the yelp, and the purr.
Hen turkey sounds are the ones most often used when calling turkeys. Both hens and gobblers will respond to hen talk. At different times of the year, season, or day, hens may communicate for different reasons. While feeding, purrs and clucks are often used. Scratching, such as these hen turkeys are doing, is their primary means of finding food. As much as 95% of a turkey's day, from fly down to fly up, is taken up by eating. Turkey flocks traditionally spread out as they feed, and usually only travel 200 yards during the course of an hour. While together, feeding turkeys may communicate alarm to one another if they see a predator, such as a fox. With another call, they may communicate a need for personal space while feeding. If separated, they may call out for companionship. Sometimes they sort of talk to themselves and direct attention of other flock members toward something they've discovered. Wild turkeys must do 3 things to ensure survival. They must avoid being eaten by a host of both mammals and birds of prey. They must constantly exploit their environment for food. And they must be successful in breeding and raising poults to adulthood. Because turkeys are gregarious and flock-oriented, their ability to communicate needs, dangers, and desires is an important dimension of their social life and overall well-being. Understanding what these basic calls mean will help equip you when calling turkeys.
All right, now let's take these three ABC sounds and let's break them apart so that you can understand what they mean and when to use them. Now, let's start with a cluck. Cluck's probably the simplest sound a turkey makes. It's just a simple little puck, puck. What's a turkey saying when he's clucking? Well, a turkey's basically saying what's on his mind. Simple way to remember it is he's looking around, so he's saying, look. As he's feeding around, for example, he'll look over here and he'll go, look. And then he'll look over here, look. 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 Now, as a turkey gets separated from other birds and he's looking for birds, he'll start to use that cluck a little bit louder because once again he's saying what's on his mind. He's looking for another bird and he's going, look. 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 Now, what happens when a turkey sees some danger? You could have a flock of turkeys walking around and all of a sudden one of them sees something that's really not right. What does he do? He goes, look, 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 look. This is called a danger putt or a warning, what's commonly called a putt call. All it is a cluck that's given very loud. Look, 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 look. All right, next, let's take the purr. What is a purr? Well, first of all, it's kind of a little whining sound that kind of goes, and it can be given loud or soft. But according to the biologist, a purr is really a spacing call to keep space. For example, let's say some turkeys are feeding through the woods as a flock, and that little zone of area that they're going to feed through is real important to them. What's in there is going to be theirs. So they kind of mildly threaten each other using the purr, just a little that says, my space. In other words, the purr, my space, my space, my space, my space. Now, as a turkey crowds into another turkey's space, those purrs become a little bit louder and more aggressive. They put a little more emphasis behind it to warn them off. My space, my space, my space. Now the last and most important sound, the sound that will be the most productive for you to call turkeys, is the yelp. The yelp is the one sound that says, come here. And obviously, since it says come here, which is what you want that turkey to do, to come to you, this becomes the most important sound. Ow. Ow, ow. Come to me. Come to me, come to me. Come to me. Come to me.
If you're going to be successful in calling turkeys, first you should become familiar with suitable habitat and food sources that turkeys frequent. The chances are good that you have both turkey habitat and turkeys nearby. Feeding turkeys leave behind a series of scratch marks on the forest floor. Wild turkeys have been described as perfect omnivores. They can, and do, eat just about everything. They gorge on what's available. In the spring, it's primarily insects and seeds. In summer, bugs, grasses, and berries. But they will also eat crawdads, lizards, tadpoles, even other small birds. In the fall, they'll eat anything a farmer will plant, including corn, clover, millet, and fruits of all descriptions. One of their favorite fall foods is mast, both acorns and beech nuts, and also wild grapes and black cherries. Turkeys like to feed heavily prior to going to roost. Calling turkeys from or adjacent to currently peaking food sources can be fruitful. Once bred, a hen turkey leaves the flock and disperses into neighboring territory to seek out a suitable nesting site. Favored nesting areas are usually on the edge of a field or clear cut. Next, she scratches out a depression in the grass and begins to lay an egg a day for up to 14 days. Incubation begins after she has laid what she considers to be a full clutch. Then she sits on them for another 26 days. Hatching takes 2 more days. Chicks are imprinted to the hen prior to leaving the nest. They must be able to recognize the hen and respond to her calls by the time they are 24 hours old. At this point, they leave the nest and never return. By the time they've seen 2 sunrises, wild turkey poults can and do exhibit nearly all of the behavioral traits found in adult turkeys. They can peck and feed themselves, they can purr when brooded, and they can preen their feathers. Within 2 days, males can strut and females can mimic a breeding posture. The poult vocalizations also include the put call for alarm and a whistle or KeeKee when lost or looking for companionship. The flock moves about in an arc behind the brood hen, and for the first 14 days of their life, the poults are mobile bug zappers. Insects not only comprise nearly all of their diet, but one study concluded that a week-old poult consumed over 3,000 items in a single day, approximately 90% of which was bugs. For the first 14 to 21 days of life, poults roost on the ground at night. Well over 1/2 of the predation loss in the first year of life occurs during this pre-flight ground roosting period. Turkey predators include coyotes, raccoons, bobcats, skunks, great horned owls, and hawks. By the time they have seen 3 weeks of life, they have flight feathers and can fly up to roost at night. This takes them out of reach of most predators. Wild turkeys have both a crop for storing food and a gizzard for crushing it. After 1 month, poults vary their diet between insects and vegetable matter. During a poult's first 90 days, it will usually gain over 1 pound a month. By the end of September, a jake will weigh over 7 pounds. Once these poults can fly, they will spend virtually every night of their lives on a tree limb. This behavior trait also has benefits to we turkey callers. It is possible in the evening to owl call or crow call to birds that are roosted in the vicinity. The toms often gobble at your locator call and give away their position. Once roosted, they stay put. The next morning, you can sneak in and call them. For turkeys, flocking is a safety game. Once poults are mobile, hens often band together. These flocks may number more than 20. That's 40 sharp turkey eyes on the lookout for danger. It's a system that works well. Juvenile birds learn to identify the full spectrum of calls quickly. Both jennies and jakes rely on a special assembly call in the fall. It's called a KeeKee. Studies have proven conclusively that a wild turkey can distinguish between and recognize individual calls from specific birds. Straight-line logic also states that turkeys can recognize a human caller. For this reason, it is wise to learn to use more than one type of calling device when out there talking to the birds.
Boy, that sounds great. That's this 3D flip sider, and that's not only has slate on one side, but it has glass on the other side, and each one of these surfaces has its own separate sound chamber, so you get 2 distinct sounds. Also, by having the glass on the other side, this allows you to make one of the specialty sounds, which is the KeeKee. It's the sound that a young turkey makes when he gets separated from his mama, it sounds like this. Now you'll notice when I'm playing this KeeKee on this call, I'm not making the circular motions that you usually make to do the yelp. I'm just making a half moon circle and a long, smooth, even stroke. You get to where you can do a KeeKee on a glass call like this, you'll really impress your friends, because most people don't think you can make it on a friction call, and this is one of the few friction calls that it works real well on. But as I said, that's a good call to use in the fall, and it's also very effective on gobblers in the early part of the spring. For some reason, when you KeeKee at them, they're going to gobble just to see what you are. You add the yelps to it, then we call it a KeeKee run. As the poults develop, their vocal cords develop, and then they later on in the fall they'll start doing 2 or 3 of the whistles and following it with a yelp. And as I said, then we call it the KeeKee run. It sounds like this. And that a turkey can't do it much better than that. That's a really accurate KeeKee run. And you can do it too.
Understanding a boss gobbler's routine can give you an edge. Prior to or just after fly down, a tom will assemble hens by gobbling. By mid-morning, most hens are bred and many disperse. Within 3 hours after first light, a large percentage of gobblers are again seeking hens. This 9 a.m. to noon slot is often more productive for calling than at dawn. Jerry located and then called in this gobbler in farm country. Every call-up is different because every tom has his own idea of how to approach the hen. In this case, Jerry is using a hen decoy to give a visual cue to the gobbler once he is getting close. This day, Jerry is using a combination of slate calling, plus a mouth diaphragm. Bear in mind that gobbling is a tom call used to summon a hen. This old boy decided he would get up high on a log and gobble that hen over to him, even if it meant he would gobble until he lost his voice. This old gobbler is playing it cautious and decides to move back and forth in the brush just behind the decoy. Eventually, he decided he would swallow his pride, give in, and do the walking himself. No 2 call-ups are the same, but calling in any gobbler is a real thriller.
Before I actually show you how to play this call, I want to give you a few hints on maintenance. In order to make a friction call operate properly, you have to develop friction, and that's between the striker and the surface of the call. So if you get any body oil on it or something that's going to make it slick, you're not going to get any grip from the striker. So if you do get some oil on it, you need to clean it off. And we use this Scotch-Brite or any kind of a buff pad to dress the surface of the call only when it gets dirty. You don't have to do it all the time. Of course, on this call, you have 2 different surfaces. On the 3D flip sider, you've got the glass on the other side. You use a little bit more abrasive pad to clean the glass. And I use a fine sandpaper, and I like to sand it in one direction. I'll sand it east and west, this being north, and then I'll play across that grain. That gives you something to grip on when you're making the clucks, or something gives you a more raspy yelp sound. Now, in order to play the call, the two main things that you need to remember are the angle that you hold the striker, and that you never have to pick the striker up. You start picking it up, you change the angles, and it makes it awful hard to play. So if you, and the striker doesn't make any sound when you move it back. So as long as you don't pick it up, you're always going to have the right angle. Now, in order to make the clucks, well, I'll start with the yelps. The yelps is the main one that you want to make, and you make it by making real tight little circles, just around and around, just like you're writing your name, except you do it in circles and not a whole lot of pressure, but about the same amount of pressure at all times. It's a two-note sound, so the high part of the note is carried by that first part of the circle. As you bring it down, you get the low part. And that's totally accurate. That's just like a turkey does it. Nothing hard about that. Now, to make the cluck, you just push down a little bit, give it until it catches, and then peck it. And don't follow through, just a light peck, and you get the cluck. For the third one of the three basic sounds, the purr, you straighten it up a little bit, grip the striker a little tighter, but you don't push it down very hard, just very light. And that's the purr. My space. There's nothing hard about it. It's just a little bit of practice and the proper technique. So remember, keep the striker pointed at about that angle. I don't know how many degrees it is, but it's not very many. And never pick the striker up. The circles for the yelps, peck it for the cluck, skip it for the purrs, and of course you can do it on either side, gives you a little different tone. And that's as good as you're ever going to sound. A turkey can't sound any better than that.
Wild turkeys have excellent vision. The quality of their daylight vision exceeds that of man. They are especially adept at detecting movement. Their eyes are positioned on the side of their head, which gives them monocular vision. To achieve depth perception, a turkey needs only to turn his head slightly and view the object at a different angle. This also helps a turkey judge the distance of elements he views. Because wild turkeys possess excellent full-color vision, it is important to wear camouflage clothing when calling them. A wild turkey's hearing is keen and also exceeds that of humans. A gobbler's perception of where a sound originates is extremely acute. If a gobbler hears a hen at 200 yards, he can walk to within a few feet of where the call originated. Of all the calling devices available to fool the ears of a wild turkey, the slate may be the easiest to master. Notice how alert this bird is. Watch his head cocking this way and that. He hears the hen but can't find her. This is a common call-up. Expect called turkeys to come in looking and listening. Watch this jake closely. If you call as instructed by the callmasters, you can entice a wild turkey right into your lap. Before you can call a wild turkey in, you first must locate one. During the spring, gobblers often gobble at crows and owls. In the process, they give away their location.
You know, it's one thing to be able to call a turkey, but it's another thing to have a turkey that you're calling to that can hear your calls. So it's important to be able to locate turkeys. Now, there's a number of little tricks that you can do, little sounds that you can make to get that turkey, especially in the springtime, to give away his location. One of the all-time favorites is to use the hoots of a barred owl right at first light when that turkey's still up on the roost. When that turkey hears that barred owl, he'll respond to it because he considers that barred owl an enemy. Now, this is what a barred owl sounds like. The pattern you're blowing is who cooks for you, who cooks for y'all. Sounds just like this. Now, there's other ways of locating turkeys up in the day.
One of the one of the best ways is to use a crow call. And of course, I use this little Woods-Wise Crow Magnum, and it's so loud I'm going to turn my head to call on it to keep from blowing your eardrums out. But when you're using a crow call to try to get a turkey to gobble, the best thing to do is be aggressive with it. Try to sound like a crow that's fighting with an old chicken hawk, and get after him a little bit, because sometimes you can just call on a crow call and the turkey won't say a word, but you get to squalling on it like a mad crow and he will gobble at it. It should sound like this. And he'll gobble at that if he hears it, and he possibly can, he's going to sing out.
Now there's another way of getting a turkey to gobble, and this will work in the fall as well, but especially in the spring. Sometimes when one gobbler thinks another gobbler's moved into his territory, and that's especially in the springtime, he's going to gobble back to it. Now I'm going to use a rubberneck gobbler to produce that gobble, and all you do is shake it just like this. Simple little shake like that, sounds like another gobbler gobbling. Very often that gobbler will jump right on it and give away his location. Locator calling. It's a good way to find out if you're within earshot of a gobbler.
I love to hear that gobble.
Me too.
Calling turkeys. I love it. But there's something about calling turkeys that you've got to think about, or it won't work for you. You got to think about how to set up when you're calling turkeys. Now, if you just walk out in the woods with your blue jeans on and a red jacket and a yellow hat, you're not going to have much success, because turkeys will pick you out. They're wonderfully equipped to pick out unusual things in the woods. And so when you're calling turkeys, you got to think about how to set up to call that turkey in. So let me run an example by you. I do lots of wildlife photography and turkey photography, and here are some of the principles that I use when I'm photographing turkeys. It can help you calling in your turkeys. One thing is, I will always be next to a place that I want to set up whenever I make a call, because if I'm just wandering through the woods calling, what's going to happen is that without a doubt, I'm going to end up having a turkey walk in and catch me walking through the woods, and then he'll turn around and run away. And so what you want to do is make sure you're always at a position where you can set up instantly if you do get a response, if a gobbler answers you or you hear a hen yelping at you. All right, here's some principles that you want to employ whenever you're setting up on calling turkeys. If you hear a gobbler down this way, make sure you set up with a tree behind your back so you're comfortable and you can get all set up, and you get to where you don't have to move around, so where you don't have to squirm. Get up so you can just sit here and watch in the direction from which you heard the call. Now, something that's strategic, I believe, and at least for my photography needs, if I'm going to have turkeys coming close to me, I can call them in with a call. But once they get relatively close, then I've got to be able to blend in with the environment. And so one of the things I really do without exception is that I wear camo. And I don't just wear a camo jacket and blue jeans and white tennis shoes. I mean, I wear camo from top to bottom. And this particular kind of camo that I'm wearing here has a leaf cut design on it. So it's actually a 3D look. It works great. And so think about camo, not just about your jacket again, gloves. Wear camo gloves. How about a hat? Make sure you wear a hat. I even go as far as to wear a head net. The head net covers up my face because my face is high contrast against some of the backgrounds that it would have behind it in the woods. Here's another trick, and this will really help you out when you're calling in turkeys, especially gobblers, although I've seen hens respond to this too. You see this decoy right behind me? This is a decoy. It looks just like a turkey, and you set it up on a peg, on a stick in the ground, and the wind can blow and it can move just a tiny bit. And when it moves, it adds realism to your setup, because the turkey's coming in, what's he thinking? He thinks, hey, I just heard a hen over here yelping. And so when he gets relatively close, now he has visual confirmation. He sees the decoy sitting there, and he knows, oh, I guess that is what I heard. And so the roost is complete. You draw them all the way in to where you can get great pictures or get right next to them or bring them right into your lap. Here's another thing to think about. Sometimes when you're setting up, you might be in a situation where you're using a camera and you'd like to have a little more concealment so that you could maybe bring that camera up very slowly when the turkey's head's turned the other way or when his head's behind a tree and get ready to take a picture. Okay, here's something I use. I have a piece of camouflage material, and I take this piece of camouflage material and I'll just kind of drape it over some of the brush beside me. I may take a stick and stick it in the ground and drape it over this, and I'll set up a little situation where I can be behind this, between me and the expected arrival route of that turkey. And so I can have a little more camouflage than even the woods provide. But when you're setting up on turkeys, think about these things, because if you don't think about your setup, the turkey's going to catch you. Even though if your calling's great, you can call as good as Jerry or Gary, you're going to end up with a turkey coming in, he's going to see you, and then he's going to run off. So think about concealment and the setup, and you'll call in a lot more turkeys.
Farms are natural magnets for the bronze birds. In spring, hayfields are humming with insects. Corn and grain stubble fields still hold a remnant of last fall's crop. Drainage ditches provide water, and woodlots harbor roost trees. Working farms are honey holes you can't afford to overlook.
Once you've located roosted turkeys at first light in the morning, here's a tip on getting set up and calling to them. Move to within about 150 yards of the roost under the cover of darkness if possible. Then use what are known as the tree calls, which are nothing more than soft, muted yelps and clucks. These sleepy pre-dawn calls will give the roosted birds a direction to fly down to, because they tend to go in the direction of the first assembly calls they hear each morning. I bet you thought I was making all of those good turkey sounds just with my voice, but actually I wasn't. I was using a diaphragm call, a mouth diaphragm. And what this is several little latex reeds that are stretched across a metal frame, which is underneath this tape, and then it's all covered with tape. Now the purpose of the tape is to help hold it into the roof of your mouth, and that's where it is. But since I can't show you where it is in the roof of my mouth, what I'll do is I'll use my hand to show you where it fits inside the roof of your mouth. If you can get it to where it is in the right spot in the roof of your mouth, then it's easy to use. Now, if these represent my teeth, this diaphragm is fitted right up into the roof, and the edge of the tape seals against the gums on either side and against the roof of the mouth. Now you'll notice it's positioned slightly back from the front, and what it does is you don't want it up here on the end towards the tip of your tongue, because when these reeds vibrate, they'll tickle the end of the end of your tongue. So you want it back just a little ways in the roof of your mouth. Now the second element is where your tongue is and how you're using it. Now you know you can stick your tongue out, but also you can shorten it up in your mouth, and when it does, your tongue flattens out and widens out. And where that's going to fit is right up against the diaphragm, right back here, and it's going to be held back by the heel of your tongue to the roof of your mouth. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to blow air across the top of your tongue from out of your throat, and that's going to cause these reeds to vibrate, and then you're going to control the tone by how much pressure you put with the heel of your tongue against the back of that latex. Now, here's the way that's going to work. Now, again, it goes into the roof of your mouth, and then you're going to make a little hissing sound as you let the air pass out. And the more pressure that you put up against the back of it, the more you'll get that tone change, so that what you're doing is you're pressing against it to get the higher part of the yelp and then dropping it away. Now, Gary's going to demonstrate some of these sounds as we're working on it, but you'll notice the reason I can't do this myself is, with this in my mouth, I don't talk very well with it. Anyway, Gary, first of all, show them how you can make a cluck sound with this. Now all he's doing is just going puck, 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 just giving a little bit of puff of air. Now this is the purr. And the way I'm doing that is just fluttering my tongue slightly as I'm blowing. Now Gary will give you an idea of what the yelp is, and I want you to watch his mouth as he's producing it. Now the reason that he's moving his mouth like that, he's not trying to catch flies, he's really not. The reason he's doing that is it helps get the sound out of the diaphragm for that yelp. In order to get that two-note change from high to low for the yelp, chalk, 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 it helps to drop the jaw. Well, now that we've got the basics, let me show you how you can take two of these basics and blend them together to get a specialty sound that's called a cut. Now a cut is a call that turkeys use when they've been separated and they first see each other, and it's kind of a greeting that says, oh, look, 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 look at me, you know, come here, come here, come here, come here. And that's just what it does. It blends the cluck, which says, look, 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 with the yelp that says, come here, come here, come here, come here. And it's given with a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of volume and a lot of excitement. Another time that this can be used is in the springtime. When the hen first sees the gobbler, very often she'll give this cut call to say, oh, look, 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 come here, come here, come here, come here, come here. Now here's how it sounds.
You may be wondering just what a turkey responding to a call looks like. Here's a mature gobbler coming into the calling of Jerry Peterson. It's springtime, and this gobbler is displaying as he approaches the call. Jerry is using a mouth diaphragm call, and the tom is responding to hen calls. Watch as he struts, fanning his tail and gobbling. During peak breeding season, in the spring, is probably the easiest time to call in a big, beautiful gobbler like this.
Just classic. I mean, this turkey gave it all. Every step of the way, he gobbled. The colors, the strutting. His head and neck were red, white, and blue, and the color of the sun shining through his tail feathers when he'd fan out. It's painted an image that I know I'll never forget. But you know, a lot of you are sitting back there and saying, I can't call. I'm not a good caller. The truth of the matter is, I think this turkey would have come to a box call, a slate, a diaphragm, any type of basic turkey call, and equally more important, he'd have come to any type of basic calling. The clucks, the yelps, and the purrs. He was gobbling and responding just as well to those as all the other things I was throwing in there just for the fun of it. The only thing unusual that I put into this calling sequence was one call that I call a yodel yelp. In other words, it starts out like yodeling and breaks into a yelp. And it's a call that the hen gives when she's really worried and kind of excited about seeing the gobbler, and she's she just goes yodel, 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 yelp, 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 yodel, 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 yelp, 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 yelp. And the only other thing I threw in there just for fun, just to see if he'd gobble at it, was a KeeKee. And you know what? Boom! He's right in there on that KeeKee too. This is a good thing for everybody to remember. The basic calls, if you catch a turkey like this, it's in the right frame of mind, and you catch him at the right time in the right place, any one of you guys can have experiences like this, with turkeys gobbling and just coming right in and giving you the full show. You know, Gary, I think probably the prettiest types of turkey calls, and some of the best sounding, are the box calls. Now, you know, why do you call it a box call? Well, it really is a box. In this case, it's one solid piece of walnut that's been routed out on the inside. And in this case, this is called a tom and hen box because the routing goes deeper on one side, which makes one side longer than the other side on the opposite side, which is a shorter side. The long side gives you the gobbler or, you know, types of sounds, and the short side gives you the hen. And also part of the box is this paddle or lid, which is attached at one end. It has a little brass screw here that holds it in place so that it swings back and forth. And then this paddle has been covered or coated with chalk. This helps create a little friction as it slides across the edges of the box. Now, this isn't just regular chalkboard type chalk. This is a chalk that we provide that has no wax or oil in it. Now, chalkboard chalk has a wax in it, and that wax would build up and eventually the call wouldn't sound right. So you want to be sure not to use anything other than non-waxed or non-oiled chalk. Now, the way it works is you'll notice there's some rubber bands here, and those rubber bands want to make the call come back, the paddle come back to the center of the box. Now, the way you operate it is you pick up this pressure that's created from the rubber bands with your fingertips, and you lift it over to the side, and then you just let it slide back. And there's a little kind of a yelp, a little purr.
It makes it easy, doesn't it?
It sure does. And then you notice there's a little bit different over here on the gobbler side.
Deeper.
Now, to do the yelp, you just let that paddle slide back so that it covers over the sound chamber, and that'll create that little two-tone chalk sound, you know, that. You know, there's people that say that turkey sounded just like that old box call, you know. I guess that speaks highly for what types of sounds you can make on a box. Now, that's the yelp. Now, to do the purr, you just hold the tension and you let it slide back real slow.
Easy enough.
Now the cluck, you just kind of peck at it. You let it to kind of go back, but you pick it back up and away as it comes down. Now listen. So once again, you got the three basic sounds: the cluck, the purr, and the yelp.
And it's like you said, the classic hen yelp sounds just like a box call.
I really truly believe that the box call is probably as true sounding as you're going to find. Now, you got something there.
Right early in the program, you promised that you had an item that people could play right out of the package, and that's the item that I'm holding right now, and that's it's a multi-mount push-button call, we call it, because you can mount it anywhere. You can hang it on a shotgun or tie it to a tree or a decoy or wherever you want to put it. But it's what we call user-friendly or idiot-proof because it's operated by simply pushing the button. And that's a classic hen yelp, and all you have to do is push that button until it stops. And a hen turkey can't do it any better than that. And just anybody that can push that button can make a good, clean hen yelp. And in fact, that has that little raspy place where it breaks over that sometimes only a turkey can do that. And I've had turkeys that would gobble at that push button call, it wouldn't gobble at anything else. Now there are all the other two of the basic sounds that you can make. You can make a real good cluck by, you can put a little pressure on the paddle, or you can just push it, but I like to just put my thumb on it and give a little back pressure and tap it, and that's a perfect cluck. And also the purr, just push it real slow.
Can't get any simpler than that.
No, if you can't play that, you got no business in the woods by yourself. There's one of the specialty calls that you can make on this call that's a very hard call to make on most of the other calls, and that's a fly down cackle of the hen, and it's done by positioning your finger and your forefinger and your thumb a little ways down on the thing, on the plunger. Hold it tight so that your finger won't slip, and just and of course that's the sound a hen turkey will make when she flies up into a tree, when she flies across a fence, when she flies down out of a tree, and it's a sound, it's a very excited sound to use in the springtime.
You know, in the springtime, when a hen flies out of a tree like that and it gives that little excited fly down cackle like that, very often the gobbler will come right in with a gobble. And that's one thing I can do on this box. I just shake it and I can produce that gobble that gobbler's going to make just by doing this.
That's what I like to hear.
I like to hear that too.
The large fall flocks are comprised primarily of several families of hens and jennies. Most of the jakes of the year have been kicked out of their large family hen flocks. These expelled jake brothers regroup and form jake bands. These bands are comprised of young, inexperienced birds which lack the savvy of old toms or hens. Predators take a heavy toll on jake bands, and as the bands undergo attrition and the size of the band diminishes, they seldom, if ever, recruit new members to the group. Eventually, the remaining jakes reach adulthood. At this point, possibly only 2 or 3 gobblers may remain to make up the band. These brothers have a strong social bond, but if separated, they may not regroup with their siblings for days or even weeks. However, once separated from each other, old birds are callable, and this situation opens up a window of vulnerability on fall toms.
Calling up an entire flock can sometimes be difficult. Single birds are much easier to call. So it can be to your advantage to thoroughly scatter the flock and then call back the individuals. Now, let's take a look at some good and bad breaks of fall turkeys. This early winter bust illustrates a poor break because the birds have all flown to the tops of the trees. Not only can they maintain visual contact with each other, but they can also keep tabs on you. Once one bird decides to fly out, the others will follow. Here's another example of a poor bust. All the birds run or fly together as a unit. They never get scattered thoroughly, and they maintain visual contact with one another. Your chances of calling these birds back is almost 0. Now here's the kind of bust you're looking to make in the fall. Some of the birds will run and fly to the left while the rest of the group will fly clear across the field to the other side. These are thoroughly scattered birds, plus they're gobblers. You'll want to set up quickly near the break site, as these birds will begin to call to one another to relocate the rest of the group.
That's a lost hen yelp. That's a variation of the basic hen yelp, and it's just the sound that a hen turkey will make. When you scatter a group out, they want to reassemble, and they use those lost yelps to get back together. Now, gobblers also make those yelps. The basic difference in the lost yelp and the plain yelp is that the lost yelp rises in pitch, and there's an urgency and more emotion in that. That's one of the emotional variations on the plain yelp. The plain yelp just is very basic. It's just where the lost hen yelp sounds like this. And that's a sound that you can use. It's very effective in the fall, and I also use it during the spring. Gobblers, when they're looking for hens, they don't care whether they're lost or not. And of course, that's one that you can do for a long period of time, and you may even get a hen to yelp back at you, and that could also trigger a response from a gobbler. So the lost yelp is the one that you can use any time of the year, and turkeys respond to it very well. And it's just a longer, repeated series of, and I've heard turkeys do it 35 and 40 times. It's just over and over again with, remember that emotion, that urgency that means, please come get me. I'm over here and I'm lost. And it just sounds like...
Let's examine the differences between a hen and a gobbler. Size variation is noticeable if they are together. Toms are 2 times the size of hens. The coloration of a hen is basically brown. The hen head is best described as blue-gray, and feathering extends up neck and head. Gobblers, on the other hand, are basically black, and feathers are iridescent, and tail fan is a deep chestnut. A gobbler's head is void of feathering and has a white crown and blue or red face. A long, coarse beard grows out from the chest. Toms are the ones that fan their tail, strut, and gobble.
Calling turkeys. Well, you know, when you're calling turkeys, it's real strategic that you become concealed. If you're not hiding, turkeys are going to pick you up. That's something you can't overlook, because turkeys have incredible eyesight, and they've got this uncanny ability to pick up movement. They can pick up movement about 5 times as well as humans can. So when you're out calling turkeys, think about this. You have to be concealed, and here's why it works for you. With this type of a blind, this is called a blind, with this kind of a blind, it's a portable blind, and I can actually see through it. I've cut some ports in it, some holes, so that I can have a good view down this logging road and also out here towards this field. Now, when you set up a blind, you want to set it up in such a fashion that you're on a predicted travel route of a turkey. Because if you just set it up randomly, I mean, what are the chances a turkey is going to be in that vicinity? So I've done some scouting. I know that there are turkeys that roost over here, and there's a green field at the end of this little logging road, and the turkeys are going down here every day and strutting out in this field. And so I've got a good location, and so I set my blind up, and when I'm calling, I'll do a few calls. Matter of fact, don't ever call until you are set up. Once you are set up like this, then I'll do a few calls, and I'll start watching and listening, because I'm listening for a gobbler to answer me. So I would set up, and I would make a few calls and listen. You may be here an hour or two. So a good idea is to bring some kind of a bench or a stool where you can sit down in here. Here's a nice thing about blinds. Think about this. When you're calling, especially with a friction call, like Gary Sefton was using, this is a slate, and what I'm doing is I'm moving. See the sticks moving, the striker? And so if you're using a blind, here's a big bonus, because now I can get down within the concealment of the blind, and I can use that to my benefit. So when you're setting up to call turkeys, think about these things. Think about setting up the blind. Think about maybe having an opportunity with a blind to have your son or your daughter sit in here with you, or your wife. You can share this opportunity to call in a wild turkey. If you don't use some kind of concealment, the turkeys will teach you otherwise, because they'll catch you every time.
The composition of the turkey flock has undergone a reshuffling by the time winter sets in. The hens and jennies have formed a bond that will perpetuate the flock. There is still a hierarchy among the older hens, but they basically tolerate one another for the well-being of the flock. Most jakes of the year by this time have segregated into jake bands, or soon will. There's a notable size difference between young jakes, young jennies, and hens. It's likely that much jake dispersal is due to active displacement initiated by adult hens. Some winters are really tough on the big birds. Heavy, long-lasting deep snows definitely limit the available food. In northern areas, it's during this time of the year that shrubs and grasses which bear and hold their berries and seeds into winter are important as a food source. Wild turkeys have forever been a part of the North American wilderness. The early morning rattle of the boss gobbler and the clear yelps of the hens were part of the morning sounds when Lewis and Clark ascended the Missouri. And earlier, when the ancestors of their Indian guides walked the canyon rims in moccasins, their arrows fletched with turkey feathers. The same wild turkeys that have been adapting to our presence for thousands of years still fly to roost each afternoon as the sun sets. Because we care about wildlife and manage it for the future, this handsome bird will always grace American woodlands, and his thundering gobbles will forever greet the dawn.
So there you have it, a simple formula for calling the wild turkey and calling them up close. If you enjoy calling wildlife as much as I do, you'll want to look for the rest of the Vocal Wildlife series from the Woodswise Callmasters.
For more information on the Woodswise Vocal Wildlife series and wildlife calls, ask for the Micromag Call Catalog. Call 1-800-735-8182. Sportsmen can ask for the Woodswise Hunting Products Catalog. Call 1-800-735-8182.
I love to hear that gobble.